You're listening to Trek FM.
Hello and welcome to From There to Here, Trek FM's 50th Anniversary Rewatch, in which we look at all 729 episodes of Star Trek from beginning to end. I'm Mike from Stage 9.
And I'm Brandon from Melodic Treks.
And today we're going to be talking about two episodes of Star Trek, one of Deep Space Nine and one of Voyager, The Darkness and the Light, and Fair Trade. So let's get started with The Darkness and the Light. Brandon, you want to give a synopsis of this episode?
So, there's somebody from possibly Kira's past who is killing all of her friends in the Shakar resistance, and she doesn't know what's going on, and she has to figure it out.
Enter Bryan Fuller. This is the very first anything that Bryan Fuller had a hand in writing. He wrote the story. The script was written by Ron Moore. And yeah, what did you think about Bryan Fuller's small screen debut?
I always forget this episode. So I'm started watching this episode, and I'm like, what episode is this? Like, it was a lot like you and I were on the Ready Room episode for Things Past, and I'm like, what is this episode? But this is one of them, too, where I'm just like, what's going on? I don't recognize this at all. And it was like 15 minutes in the episode before I'm like, oh, I remember this one here. And I've seen it lots and lots and lots, and I like the episode a lot. I think it's great. But it's just one of the ones that it just gets pushed out of the way in my memory.
I guess that's kind of how I feel until, like, you hear the thing that says, like, that's one. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, it's that episode.
Yes.
I got it. Yeah. So what do you think about it?
I think it's cool. I think one of the best callbacks that I like in this episode a lot is see if I can pronounce their names right. Lapusa and Pharrell, Kira's friends from the Resistance, the guy with the one arm, right, and the woman with the crazy red hair. Like, I like seeing them again because I think they're great characters. I'm really sad that they died in this episode because I think that they're a good addition. We've only seen them a couple of times at Deep Space Nine, but I like both of those characters a lot. It's a fascinating episode in the way that it's done with this simultaneous transmission of a message to Kira and the death of these people and how he uses her own voice for this message and whatnot. Like, it's a creepy episode, and it's very moody. Kira can't do anything because she's pregnant, right? So she feels incapacitated, and she feels like she can't do anything about the situation that's going on except be protected, and it's totally pissing her off because she wants to do something. Right? And I think that says a lot about Kira's character and who she is. So I enjoy watching this episode. I just keep forgetting about it.
Yeah, no, I think this episode is really good, too. I mean, it's interesting to get sort of insight into Kira's past. And I think in a lot of ways, this episode kind of plays off of some certain, like suspense and horror movie tropes and everything, and I think that it works really well. I mean, the thing that I kept on thinking while watching the ending was that it's very sort of influenced by the Silence of the Lambs, with Buffalo Bill, and it puts the lotion into the basket, that kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, and now, like, knowing that Bryan Fuller is such a fan of those books and movies that he made his own TV show out of it, I think is really, really kind of interesting. I'm like, you can see it all the way back here. And I think that it is kind of like a cool mystery. I like these sort of mystery stories that involve like very formal structures, like the idea that one by one her colleagues are getting killed off, and when are you going to get to her? The stuff with her being pregnant and trying to take matters into her own hands, it sort of worked for me, and it sort of didn't. I bought it to an extent because she is such a determined character, and she's so protective of her friends and her colleagues that she's going to try to take matters into her own hands. But at the same time, I do not see her as being that reckless with the baby, I mean, they like have to sit her down and talk to her a few times and be like, you can't do this because, she's like, I should be protecting people on Bejor. And they're like, you have to protect someone up here right now, And she's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like, I just, I was waiting for the scene, which comes after this episode where, Miles and Keiko are like, what the hell is your problem? Seriously, dude, you need to stop. And we never got that scene. And I also thought it was, I mean, maybe it was kind of set up okay, but the whole thing where she's like, give me a sedative, I'm like, oh, I see what's happening here. But that's such a vague thing. Like, unless there's like one sedative that they use in the future for everything, that doesn't work for me. Sorry.
Yeah. Even watching it, like the first time I watched it, I remember as soon as she's like, give me a sedative, I'm like, oh, there we go. It's not going to work because of the herbs,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know why. There's so many episodes that do something like that, and I don't know why this one, it just clicks so suddenly every time I watch it. But, it's not because I've seen it so much. Like, even the first time I watched the episode, I'm like, I know the ending here now.
Also, I really love the photography in this episode. In addition to the lighting being all moody and stuff like that, there's some compositions in here, and some like the way that they shoot sick bay and stuff like that. It is just interesting because we haven't really seen it shot that way before. I don't know,
right?
It's just like a couple little things here and there. I think are pretty cool.
There's one thing that I want to talk about here that I think is very important here. So, this character, Fala, who, I think she's a really neat character, and how, she cleaned the floors and provided information to the Resistance forever, right? And nobody knew about her and whatnot. Her death is pretty gory for Star Trek.
Oh, yeah, totally. And then I kept on thinking, like, this is so bizarre because, her death is very gory. You see her, like, charred body, like, all deformed and everything on the transporter pad. And then they go back to it. And, like, Kira, comes on board. And that, to me, did not play at all realistically because you would think that all of them, I mean, like, did you see Sicario?
Not yet.
Okay, it's awesome. But in like, the very first scene of the movie, they find, like, a bunch of dead bodies. And then they cut to, like, all these SWAT guys basically, like, standing around outside just vomiting. They're all just vomiting because what they've seen is, like, the most horrifying thing they've ever seen in their lives. And this body, way more horrifying than anything those SWAT guys saw at the beginning of Sicario. And everyone's just walking around, and then, like, Kira beams on board. You'd think they'd be like, you don't want to come here, Kira, because that's your good friend. And she's just like, oh my God, this makes me so mad. And it's like, no, that doesn't make you mad. That, like, puts you into some form of shock, But it was, bold on their part for doing something so graphic. You know?
Like, just imagine how badly that runabout would stink.
Yeah. Yeah. Poor Worf and Dax have to fly all the way back to DS9 with it. Yikes.
Yeah, that's quite bonkers. I'm wondering, like, how that's going to play into Discovery. Like, how violent is Discovery going to be? Because Star Trek is a family show. You generally can watch it with kids. Like, I'm not going to watch Conspiracy with my 6-year-old daughter. I'm not going to watch The Darkness and the Light with my 6-year-old daughter. But there's a lot of Star Trek that I can watch with her. So I'm just wondering, how much am I going to be able to show my 6-year-old daughter in January?
I think it'll be a bit more graphic. I think it's definitely, I don't think it's going to be R, but I think it's going to be PG-13.
See, and I don't have a problem with that because I watch Hannibal and I watch Game of Thrones and I watch a lot of violent shows. So it's not that I have a problem with violence or, sex or anything like that. I enjoy watching all that on TV. It just, I don't know if it's going to fit in Star Trek. I'm gonna love it. I know that I'm gonna love it, whatever it is. I'm just worried because now I might not be able to show my daughter this new Star Trek show.
I think that Fuller is aware of what Star Trek is and is aware of, like, Star Trek's audience. And I really do think that even if his personal tendencies, gravitate towards the, macabre or whatever, that he will exercise restraint when it comes to Star Trek because he understands what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the idea of like families watching it and it being like a generational thing.
Well, and I'm torn because part of me wants it to be tame so I can watch with my kids, but part of me is like, no, man, no holds barred. Like, let's get some real craziness here. Like, let's make this, totally. So I don't know. Like, I'm torn. I can't wait to see what's going to happen because I don't know how I'm going to feel about it when it comes out, but I could go either way for sure.
I think it'll be exactly what it needs to be.
Excellent. Well, should we move on to fair trade?
Sure. This is the episode where Neelix is feeling like he doesn't really have a place aboard Voyager, even though just like 2 episodes ago, like Janeway was like, I think I'm going to make you an ambassador. So he's trying to find other stuff to do, and they're like, hey, Neelix, we need your help with something. And he's like, oh, okay. And he goes to the bridge, and they're like, what is this space? And he's like, this is a weird part of space. It's kind of dangerous. There's a lot of, it's a wretched hive of scum and villainy. And you don't really want to go in there if you don't have to, but you have to. So let's go. And he runs into an old buddy of his. And he's like, hey, can you help me out with some stuff, like a map and everything? And the old buddy's like, yeah, we could totally do that. But can you help me out, like selling some medical supplies? And then he ends up like, dealing drugs and killing people. And, well, maybe he doesn't kill people, but he's involved in a murder. And now Neelix is freaking out because this guy who's sort of like, that trouble friend that everyone has is, dragging him down just as he's, trying to make a name for himself aboard Voyager. And hijinks ensue. Mm-hmm. So what did you think about fair trade?
I think that this is the most important episode in Star Trek Voyager.
Interesting.
No, I'm
Why
just kidding.
that?
I don't think that.
Oh.
I really like this episode a lot, though.
Okay.
I like Neelix a lot. I think Neelix is a great character. He's fun to watch, and I know that a lot of people don't like him, but I really enjoy this episode, and I believe that this is how Neelix would act in this situation, where he's like worried because he's been living with these people on this ship for 3.5 years already, or whatever it is, 3 years, whatever the time is, but these are different people, and they have completely different philosophies than what he's used to and what he's lived his whole life with in the Delta Quadrant. And he's worried that they're going to drop him off when they might not need him anymore. We know that they won't do that, but he still can't quite believe that this is actually how these people are acting and how these people are and how they believe. And I believe that Neelix would act in this way where he's like, this is why he's been trying to expand his knowledge and learn all this stuff on the ship for the last few episodes, right? Why he's always in engineering trying to learn something, and he's doing this show, and he's cooking, and he wants to do security and do away missions, and he's trying to make himself more valuable because he's running out of space that he knows. So I think it's a fantastic Neelix episode, and I really enjoy watching this one.
Yeah, I don't think it's too bad either. I think it might be a little bit cliche. I think that there's some stuff with him and his friend, which is a little sort of on the nose. But on the whole, I think that it's a pretty good episode as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to be in that situation where it's like one, you make a decision for good and it turns out wrong, and just one bad decision leads to another. Like, I've been in situations like that before. Nothing like this where, my friends are getting thrown in jail for drug selling and whatnot, right? But, I've been in situations along this line where, I think I'm doing the right thing for the right reason, and it just goes wrong, and one bad step leads to another. So, I don't know. I think it's a fine episode. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
Excellent. Yeah. There's not much we could talk about. There's, it's not like a high concept episode like The Darkness and the Light or anything like that. But
no, but it's still, not too terrible. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that pretty much takes care of these 2 episodes. Brandon, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me here on the network with new episodes of Melodic Treks, which is all about the music of Star Trek. And you can find me on Twitter at Brandon-Mutala, as well as in the Babel Conference every once in a while talking Trek. Where can people find you, Mike?
You can find me right here on Trek FM doing Stage 9, where we talk about the people who make Star Trek. And you can also find me on Twitter at Mumbles3K. And the two of us will not be back tomorrow, but Lee and Zach will, to talk about 2 more episodes of Star Trek, Alter Ego and The Begotten.